Also, it seems like a lot of the AI optimizations within the ASC Plus are a little bit more hidden now, right? So you can't necessarily shut those off as easily.
And you know I struggle with those. It's so sneaky too. It's like a new one every couple of weeks. I'm like, where did this come from? Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big one right now that I'm seeing that they're hiding more and more is like placements. Now, like it's so hard to be able to go in and change your placements if you don't always want to be on like the feeds or the story placement. So yeah, it's like hide and seek on Ads Manager now.
Seems like it.
Um, I think the other thing too that we're seeing, and I've heard a lot of chatter around, is just like the whole new interface of campaign builds with like ASC Plus. And instead of doing like manual versus automatic, like all advertisers are being forced into doing automatic campaign builds. Rachel, I know you love that.
it's a little bit of a struggle because I just don't think Meta knows best all the time. I think there's a reason that you have people who are experts in the field who are able to like maneuver it, but turning everything on automatically is just like a one size fits all solution when like clients are not one size fits all. Like it's very specific and tailored. So I think, yeah, could talk about my beef with Meta for days and days.
And with that, it's a perfect segue into welcome everyone to Don't Let Poor Testing Tank Your Meta Ads Performance. I see we have participants rolling in, so we're really excited for you to have us today. Let us know in the chat where you're joining from, what you're hoping to learn, and your company name. It's always fun to see who's joining us. We've had people from all across the world join these webinars, so please jump in the chat. We'd love to see where you're coming from, what you're looking to learn, and we'll sort of tailor this presentation to you.
I'm always curious to see if anyone else is coming from, well, coming from Ohio, where I live. I typically don't see that. So I want to see if any Ohio people out there. And where are you, Rachel? You're in Minnesota, right?
Oh my gosh, we got an Oshkosh, Wisconsin. No, I'm in Milwaukee,
Oh
Wisconsin.
yeah, oh
We
yeah.
got two of them. Wow.
Nice. LA, Santa Rosa. Lance, welcome from Canada. You and I are cold together. I'm calling in from Boston today. Awesome. Dallas, NYC. Welcome, Cheryl. Germany. We always have some fun folks in here. Awesome. Canada, warm and sunny. Oh, jealous that it's warm and sunny over there. In Chicago. Nice. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Seems like we have a good mix of all the coasts and then some of our neighbors to the north and to the east. So this session's all about unlocking e-com success by refining your meta ads testing strategy. I'm Megan Houston. I'm VP of Digital Marketing Strategy over here at Agital, and I have the pleasure of working very closely with Caitlin and Rachel and some of our shared clients. I'll be guiding today's discussion along these two incredible industry experts. So before we jump in, I'm going to share a quick agenda. We're going to chat through the why and how of meta ads testing today. So what you need to do, what works, and why it might work or not work. Actionable best practices. So you'll get real tips that you can take away from today's session on how to fine tune your landing pages, custom labels in your product feed, and lead generation tactics for better new customer acquisition there. We'll also give you some real case studies on what we have done together for some of our clients. I see some of my shared clients in this deck with Caitlin and Rachel, so I'm excited to chat through some of those case studies. But the most important thing is ask your questions. So we'll answer questions in real time and make sure we get to them all before the end of the webinar. So you should see a Q&A box on your Zoom interface here. So pop questions in there. We'll read those out either as they come in or where they make sense throughout the presentation. So thanks so much for joining. Don't hesitate to drop questions in the chat, in the Q&A, and we'll get to them as we go. So by the end of this session, you'll have a clear and actionable roadmap to boost your ROI on Meta, refine your targeting, and optimize your e-commerce strategy for 2025 using Meta, as many of our clients have done. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce my colleague, Caitlin. Caitlin is a senior paid media manager at Agital. She and I have worked together for 6 years now. In her 6 years at Agital, Caitlin has helped drive program and service innovation for paid social, which includes all of the things, including Meta, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, TikTok, and every new social channel that pops up, Caitlin's testing and is in there. She's responsible for establishing best practices, performance-driven social strategies, delivery, and reporting. And she also works on some of our favorite Agital clients, including Apartment 2B and Kalini Coastal. So her goal is to deliver the best results for clients, both through her own work and through her team. And Rachel is our manager of paid media. Rachel manages over 350K in monthly ad spend, driving over 2 million in revenue across Meta, Pinterest, TikTok, and LinkedIn. She builds full funnel ad strategies for brands like Jelly Belly and Indigo Wild, some of our favorites, maximizing ROI through performance optimization and strategy. Rachel is always a problem solver. She stays ahead of platform updates, betas, and trends, even the AI updates in Meta that pop up every single day. So her goal is to really keep our clients' campaigns competitive. So I'm very excited to jump in. First, I want to start with a poll so we can tailor this to you. So type in the chat and answer in the poll. What is your biggest challenge right now with Meta ads? I know we see all of the below, but Caitlin and Rachel, which of the below do you feel like you see most frequently with new clients that come in?
Yeah, one I see a lot is just like the creative and products strategy. I think that's one thing that you don't really think about when you think about Meta. I mean, you're thinking about the end goal if you want to drive the revenue, efficient revenue, but are you really positioning your brand or your products in the right way? And are you showcasing the right products as well? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges I've seen with clients. Rachel, what are your thoughts?
I would agree with you. I think the creative piece is so huge, and it's just not getting any smaller as the years go by, and creative is evolving at such a rapid rate that I think a lot of clients come to us with like needing to know like what to do, what are the next steps here, and how can we stay on trend with how creative is moving forward. So
Yeah,
Totally
I think
agree.
you hit the nail on the head with that, because I think a lot of times when I think of Meta, it's like two different spheres. It's managing the campaigns, managing your audiences, managing your budget, but then there's also that other sphere of your creative, your landing pages, your messaging. So I think it's those two working together that then you drive that efficient revenue.
Agree. And I think we can close the poll, and it seems like we've hit the nail on the head. The number one challenge here was increasing conversion. So that's going to be our focus on today's webinar. You'll see a lot of how we recommend doing that, how we've done that for clients today. So it seems like we're right on the nose with our content, which is great. So that said, we can hand things over to Caitlin and we'll jump right in.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to talk today about Meta ads testing. I think it's an opportunity it's not an option anymore for e-commerce. It's really a necessity. So really the key to unlocking your valuable data, optimizing campaigns, and driving sustainable growth in the competitive online retail landscape with Meta comes from testing. And so we'll talk through some of our tried and true methods of testing with Meta and seeing some quick wins on how you can instill that into your Meta ads account. So my question for everyone right now to think about is, are you actively testing in your Meta ads account? Whenever I see accounts come in and I do audits, there's not a lot of testing happening. And so my thought process is it's never too late to test. And it's never too late to start now. And so what you'll learn today is a lot of testing opportunities that you can take with you. But before we even jump into that, I want to dive into testing some opportunities first of where we can see kind of the key e-commerce challenges within the space. So first one being, we hear it all the time, is thin profit margins. My question always for advertisers and brands are you taking into account your profit margins within your Meta strategy? Is that something that you're thinking about before positioning the specific products or the messaging for the specific products? You need to be laser focused on your efficiency, your optimization, and accurate measurement to really thrive in this challenging environment so that you aren't sacrificing efficiency because of thin profit margins. The other key e-commerce challenge that we see a lot of is high competition. So e-commerce in general is super, super competitive, especially on the Meta side of things, leads to rising ad costs, which at the end of the day impacts your profitability. So making sure that you are testing, figuring out what's working so that you are putting your spend in areas that are going to be more efficient and not dragging your efficiency down. And then the last key area that we see a lot of brands challenged with is that creative and product strategy. Really, creative is necessity. It's not a luxury anymore. If you don't have a content strategy that is based on your goals, your margins, and your customer needs, then you're really missing out on driving efficient revenue. So I would say those are kind of the top three things that we hear with e-commerce client challenges. And I think the biggest thing here that you can really do to help with driving more efficient revenue in your account is by testing. So if we go on to the next slide, my big takeaway here is that by consistently testing and optimizing, you can significantly improve your ROI on your meta ads campaigns. You can do this by reducing your ad waste. You can increase your conversion rates. You can lower acquisition costs, and you can really make data-driven decisions. So I guess from now, what we're going to do is dive into some of these advanced testing strategies and figure out what can you do today to start testing in your ad account so that you can improve your efficiency and really see your dollars go further than what you're seeing today.
Yeah, so going into testing a little bit more, we want to focus a little bit more on these advanced testing strategies. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with a very basic A/B test, and those are great and they're really effective, but they are somewhat limited as to what you are able to uncover, usually only testing one variable. And sometimes we want to test multiple variables at once, or we're relatively limited on our budget. So we're trying to get the most bang for our buck, trying to test as many things as we can. And in this case, we rely pretty heavily on the feed. So if you go to the next slide, we'll go into a little bit more detail on what you can test here. But I think just high level starting off, one of the biggest benefits of Meta specifically is it does give you the ability to segment out different product sets to test within your feed. And within that, there are a lot of different customization options. So you can see on the right-hand side, we have some of those options available. Using your feed is a much lower lift as well in terms of what you need to do as far as creative goes. And sometimes that's the biggest piece, is trying to organize all of your creative together, making sure you're identifying what you can test. With the feed on the back end of things, you can tweak little pieces of content very easily. So it makes testing kind of more of a breeze, I guess. So it's also a really great way of getting visibility on products that aren't showcased as often. Rather than showcasing like all products within the feed, we can narrow it down by product set. So some of the things that we can change out here within the feed, we can switch out images. We can test different descriptions as well as different call to actions. We can also switch out headlines and then primary text as well. So we're trying to find the combination of all of these factors that works towards the particular audience that we're targeting. So speaking of those audiences, we can hit the next slide here. And I wanted to go into a little bit more detail on the audiences specifically. So as you are testing out these different features, you do start to uncover a lot of the nuances within your own audience. And I think Meta sometimes wants us to treat our audiences as though they're a monolith, which is just not the case. And more as the algorithms start to update, tailoring your creative to a specific audience segment is key, and that is going to get you more conversions coming through without necessarily having to spend more. So the creative piece is huge here. Maybe you start to see that some examples of the nuances you see. You could start to see that past purchasers respond really well to new products, but cold audiences respond much better to best sellers. This is something that I see in a lot of my clients, so it's kind of a topical example. You could also notice that one segment is more responsive to having the actual title of the products in the ad itself, whereas another prefers a free shipping call out instead. So that's what we're trying to uncover with these testing strategies, is those little nuances within our audiences. It's also important to note that these differentiations, we want to build them out so that you can build these different audiences and create that tailored creative for this audience segment. One of the biggest wins and easiest wins that we have here is to break out your audience segments by cold and remarketing. This is such an easy win for your account holistically, your cold and remarketing audiences, I would say 99% of the time, need to be separated by ad set. This gives you full visibility into who you are targeting when you are testing and when you're just doing like your evergreen campaigns. So what we're doing here is we're giving Meta specific parameters on who to target. When you combine your cold and your remarketing audiences together, 9 out of 10 times, Meta is going to take the low-hanging fruit and just spend towards remarketing. And the issue with that is that it's not a very effective long-term social strategy. An effective long-term social strategy is focusing on building your audiences up. So we want to make sure that we have the remarketing and the cold audiences separate so that we can continuously fuel the funnel. So did you want to add, Caitlin?
Yeah, I was gonna say the biggest takeaway here is go into your ad accounts today and define your audiences, because as Meta is moving more and more towards Advantage Plus shopping campaigns and doing automatic campaign builds, you want to make sure you have your audiences segmented out so you do get that granular look into the data. So yeah, definitely a big takeaway here for sure, segmenting out your audiences.
Yeah, and Lance, to your question as to how you stop Meta from remarketing. So you exclude the remarketing audiences from your cold audiences. So you can create a list within the audience segment on Meta ads. For example, like all site visitors, that's something that we would want to exclude from our cold audiences so that they're not being targeted as far as overlap goes. Let me know if that answers your question and I can respond in the chat as well. We can go to the next slide here, Megan. So transform test success into scalable growth. Obviously, the reason we run tests in the first place is to increase overall performance. So once we discover who or which creative is the winner of the test, the question then becomes, how do we implement our findings? And one of the easiest and most effective ways to do this is by breaking out an Advantage Plus campaign. The primary goal of this campaign is to get spend behind these winning creatives to result in more conversions. So this particular campaign, if you are not familiar, is Meta's answer to automation. It's an automated campaign. It uses Meta's algorithm to determine who will respond the best to these creatives. Now, putting your winning creatives into this particular campaign type is a really effective strategy because they get spend behind them very quickly and they learn really fast. So I would give it a couple of weeks. If you're testing out, you find a winner, you put that into an Advantage Plus campaign, let that run for a couple of weeks, and then put that into your evergreen campaigns, your evergreen cold prospecting, your evergreen remarketing. This gives them kind of a boost. It gives the ads a little bit of a boost and a little bit of a head start as far as learning goes. So that's everything that we have there. We can go to the next slide. Yep.
So I'd like to pause there. I know we have quite a few questions kind of in the chat and the Q&A. So for right now, how are you currently segmenting your meta ads? I know Caitlin and Rachel, we see all of these, right? We've done these. So there's some examples of these to be seen yet in the presentation, but Caitlin and Rachel, any of these where you've just seen massive success that you'd recommend our attendees, if there's anything that they haven't tried yet, really start with this one. What's your favorite?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm between two of them. I'm between by margin and, well, I guess using custom, I would say by margin, in which I'll talk about a little bit more with one of a case study with one of my clients, Kalini Coastal, later on in the presentation, where we did segment out by profit margin, and it's resulted in very, very efficient revenue. So it's something that I think a lot of times we think about on the Google side of things of segment out by profit margin, but also doing it on the Meta side is just as valuable. So I would say that one's one that I think has a ton of value that's not being used.
Yeah, I would say I tend to start with by product category. It gives us a really good baseline as to who our existing audience is or what our existing audience is responding the best to. So that's typically what I start with. And then we'll go into a little bit more detail on using custom labels, but I'm a big fan of using a custom label.
Love that. Okay, great. And if we stop the poll, those are actually the two least popular answers of what people are currently doing. So right now, no one is sharing by margin, which I think is really key. That's going to be really important, right? So segmenting by margin, I think, is going to be really important, especially for all of those who are looking to drive conversions. You want to make sure that you're driving efficient conversions, right? If you're driving a ton of conversions at a product with a really low margin, it's not going to get as much bang for your buck as if you have a high margin product set and you're advertising to that. So thanks everyone for interacting with the poll. That was really helpful. And I think it, again, just makes it better for us to know how to help you boost conversions and revenue.
Okay, so jumping in to one of the testing opportunities, and it's landing pages. This one really is exciting for me because I think it's something that we don't think about on a pretty, strategic level on the meta side of things, because you're very focused on your campaign, your audience targeting, your creative, your messaging. But what about your landing page? I think the one thing that we see is like, if there's that unexpected occurrence when the right ad finds the right person at the right time, but the impact is lost when the next step of that journey fails to really meet the customer's expectations. So optimizing your landing page is really a huge opportunity for you to make your ads work smarter and not harder. So if we go to the next slide, let's jump into some of these key takeaways. So I think the biggest thing when we think about social and think about consumers in general is that over the past few years, consumers have been really forced into rethinking how, when, and where do they shop, which has forced brands to kind of shift how they're catering to their demands. So consumers are doing more mobile shopping. You can see on the deck here, 66% of consumers say that mobile has become their most important shopping tool, which I can raise my hand. I'm in that boat. I'm in that 66% for sure. And I think probably majority of you are as well, even if it's maybe window shopping. So that's something that you definitely want to take into consideration with your landing page view. The one thing that I want to ask you guys is, how do you stick that landing page to really meet your customer expectations? And I've kind of put it down into 3 different kind of categories when I look at landing page performance for really driving growth for clients. The first one being meeting their demands. So like I said before, majority of people on social are on their mobile devices. So we want to make sure that we are optimizing landing pages for mobile devices. We also want to take into account what are these users looking for? Where are they at in the buying cycle? Is this a completely cold user? What kind of messaging are we sending to them? And then is the landing page also reiterating that message? Other questions you need to ask yourself is your product offering a solution? Is your product offering a solution to a problem? Speaking to that problem solution and then driving them to a landing page. So it's really understanding who are you targeting, what are their needs, what are their demands, and making sure that your ad, your messaging aligns exactly with the landing page and where you're driving them to. The next one here kind of goes with hand in hand with exactly what I was just saying, is like building that seamless customer experience. So making sure that the ad looks and feels the same as the landing page. I can't tell you how many times I've audited accounts where their ad that they have running looks completely different than where they're driving traffic to. And they see huge increases in bounce rate. You're seeing, really, really low add to cart rate, just a lot of, negative experience for that consumer, which means you are investing your dollars not in a wise manner. So just making sure that you are putting yourself in the shoes of the consumer to understand that, hey, does this make sense, this ad driving to this landing page? And then I think the last component to kind of sticking that landing page is cross-functional alignment. So when you think about it, your landing page is important for a lot of different avenues. It's not just paid social. I mean, you're driving consumers from Google to specific landing pages. Your email, you are, utilizing landing pages in a variety of different aspects. So making sure that you have this alignment cross-channel, so that whatever ad you're using on Meta, you're also using in your email campaign on, Google on discovery. Just to make sure that you are creating that seamless customer experience for users, no matter where they are seeing an ad. So just biggest thing here when you're thinking about your landing page is those 3 aspects: meeting their demands, building a seamless customer experience, and working cross-functionally across a lot of different services. So next question is thinking through like, what are the 3 C's of high performing landing pages? And so I've kind of figured out that there's 3 components that have worked really well for e-commerce clients that I want to dive into today. So the first one being content. This one here is understanding what is this user wanting. Paying attention to the user intent is really crucial to really eliminate that friction from the user experience. So really thinking about emotions and making sure that your ad and landing page evoke and fulfill that intent that a user is wanting or needing. The other thing here is understanding too of where is this user at within the buying cycle. Is it a completely new user? What kind of messaging does that user need? Is there a problem that they're having that your product can solve? And then with that, that's the second C word is continuity. So again, creating that seamless customer experience. One thing that Meta has found is that 48% of landing pages are not either visually similar to the ad or could use improvement. So the next time when you are thinking about creative, also think about your landing page performance. Which landing pages are driving high conversion rates? How can you then cater those high converting landing pages with ad content so that you are driving that seamless customer experience that's going to equate to efficient revenue and a better customer experience. Then the last C here is convert. Obviously, at the end of the day, what we want to make sure we're doing is driving users to a page that they're going to convert. So optimizing both your ads and landing pages for mobile is huge on the social side of things. Like I mentioned before, majority of users are accessing their social media on their phones. So you want to make sure your ads are formatted to cover the 9:16 story ratio and leverage that complete vertical space with your ad component for stories. The other thing in terms of landing page with mobile view is just making sure that you keep your headline and unique sales proposition and call to button highly visible. So typically above the fold so that when users get to that landing page, they know exactly, what they're getting, the value they're getting, and knowing what action they need to take. The other thing to think about too with landing pages is improving your site speed. With Meta, it's reported that 53% of mobile consumers will leave a site that takes longer than 3 seconds to load. So something else to just take a pulse check on landing pages, just to ensure that it's loading fast enough, because we live in a world where people want that instant gratification. They don't want to wait. So just making sure that your site speed is up to speed is going to create that seamless customer experience. So those are the 3 C's that I see work really well for e-commerce brands. So the next time when you are looking at your creative and figuring out what landing page to drive users to, take a look at these 3 C's and really figure out, am I hitting on each one of these 3 components of customer experience based on a landing page? So with that, let's dive into an example of a client. I'll let Rachel talk through this client of hers and their success with the 3 C's and high performing landing pages.
Yeah, definitely. So this is a client that I actually share with Megan. So obviously before running any sort of test, especially a landing page test, it's important to determine what we're trying to measure here. So in this case, we wanted to see the difference between the bestsellers page and then the home page. So in this case, we were using average order value and purchases as our KPIs. We knew we would get conversions either way. We had a really strong converting audience that we were targeting here. So we were largely curious about whether or not we would see a higher average order value from the bestsellers page as opposed to the homepage. And ultimately, we found that the bestsellers page was more successful at driving sales with a higher AOV in both our cold and our remarketing audiences. So I think some key takeaways here is that when we're driving directly to the bestsellers page, it's an instant purchase experience. We have all of the products scrolling down. It's a little bit of a more basic page, but it's taking people directly to, the products themselves. Whereas the homepage, while effective at something like awareness or traffic, really informing a top of funnel audience about who we are as a brand, it's not as effective at getting those sales because it's not as easy to find the products that you're looking for. It's not all there in front of you. So in this case, we did see that the bestseller page worked really well for us across all of the audiences. And I think Caitlin had mentioned as well that tailoring the ad creative to the landing page is particularly important. So one of the big takeaways here is that the ad itself was calling out the bestsellers. So we obviously want to be driving to this bestseller page. We can hop on over to the next slide if there are no questions on this one.
Yeah, I want to just add, Rachel, I think an important point that you brought up is if you have a really large product catalog and you're an e-commerce business, I think it's really important to consider what Caitlin mentioned, the customer experience going to your site for the first time. If you have a really large product catalog and they're going to your site for the first time, they're going to get analysis paralysis. They're not going to know where to go, what to click on. And so by sending them just one click further into the site, giving them a suggested, or as Rachel said, more pointed view of the catalog, I think is really key. So if you have a bestsellers page, if you have like a new products page, consider focusing on something like that for cold audiences, just to be a little bit more approachable to that totally new consumer. So really great points, Rachel.
Yeah, so I think we had talked about this a little bit earlier, discussing the custom labels for better personalization. So custom labels is a great way to start testing within the feed. A custom label is essentially a categorization or product set within the feed that updates on a consistent schedule. So it allows us to get a little bit more tailored as to the products that we're showing the audience. So on this next page here, we'll go into a little bit more detail. We have some key use cases, but first and foremost, we can talk about just some of the options that you have and some examples of a custom label. So Caitlin had mentioned the higher margin products. That's definitely something that we can use here. If we want to increase AOV. There's also the option for like gateway products that are typically easy to purchase for new users, new arrivals, bestsellers, sale, etc. It's kind of like an infinite amount of, you can really do anything with a custom label, which is great. I actually have a client who gets new products in almost daily. So we wanted to create a custom label for them that would refresh every 24 hours with the latest products so that we would be able to target our remarketing users with ads that showcase the most up-to-date inventory, because we noticed that that was what those users were coming to us for, those like trendy, really fast-hitting products. So that's just one example of what we can do with those custom labels. But as far as use cases go, they're great for optimizing for budget allocation. So getting spend behind those products that maybe go under the radar or are a little bit more seasonal, or maybe just products that you want higher visibility on. This gives us more control as to how much spend is getting behind those products. It's also great for targeted promotions, calling out specific products that are on sale, especially if those products are already popular. Showing them at that discount is a really effective way at getting people to click to the site for the first time, especially. So getting people into that funnel. It's also great to improve cross-selling and upselling. So showing different products to people who have purchased in the past. I actually had a client about a year ago who had two distinct hero products throughout the year. One product was a dress that we pushed in the spring and summer months, and then the other was a cashmere sweater that we did in fall and winter. So we actually leveraged a ton of cross-selling here, and it was hugely beneficial for us because they were the two hero products. Like those were what drove a ton of the revenue each year. So we would essentially target an ad with the like cashmere sweater, maybe in August, September, to all of those people who had purchased the dress right, in the summer months. So we were targeting people who had already purchased what we would consider like a closet staple with another closet staple, but it was more appropriate to the season. So that was a really great way for us to increase overall customer lifetime value. So I would highly recommend considering that if that's something that you've struggled with. I know that that's something a lot of my clients are thinking about a lot lately, is how do we increase this lifetime value for our customers? How do we kind of keep them coming back? It's also great for customizing ad creative, showing products that you want to highlight rather than letting Meta determine who sees the product, which can I have had many issues with that in the past. Sometimes Meta is not the best at determining who wants to see these products. So when you're breaking them out into their own custom label, creating a product set that's a little bit more tailored, again, you get more of that control, which is excellent. So we do have on the next slide here some of the things that you might want to consider. So we do have the definition of cross-sell and upselling. One of the big things that I wanted to call out, and I just wanted to pose a few questions that you might want to consider asking when you're trying to put yourself in the feet of the consumer, because I really do think that that's our job as marketers, is to put ourselves into the perspective of who our customer is. So when we're looking at the customer purchase journey, how soon after that initial purchase would you start cross-selling? So think about the product that you are selling. If you have something that's a really high ticket, high AOV item, you might not want to, jump down the consumer's throat right away with like all of these other add-ons. However, if, maybe an add-on is really effective and needed, maybe after 30 days, you start posing the question, you come up with these product sets and you show these products to the consumer who's already purchased. So it's just being really mindful as to what that consumer purchase journey looks like. What is the natural progression of the product needs? I just I just bought a vacuum, so I have that on my mind, but I bought a vacuum. And obviously you don't necessarily think about like needing to replace the filter immediately, but then after a month, after 2 months, you're like, oh, okay, like I need to replace the filter. So that's something as a marketer we pay attention to. I would then, if I was working for that vacuum company, I would retarget me with a filter ad pretty quick here. So just thinking about that natural progression. Also taking note if there are seasonal or timing factors that affect the purchase decision. And then what triggers indicate readiness for the complementary products. So think about what are the pain points that your customers are having? How can you answer their need before they even know that it's a need? That's something that I've seen more and more, especially as far as creative goes on the Meta side. If you are able to answer a problem that they maybe haven't been able to vocalize, that's a really great way to get them into the funnel. There's also the consideration of product relationships. So when you are cross-selling, how do the products that you're selling complement each other? Do they solve issues together? Is there a price relationship? And does maybe bundling those items together, does that make sense? A good way to help increase your average order value as well to do that. So that kind of goes into pricing strategy as well. What price points work for cross-selling items? If we go back to my previous example with the cashmere sweaters and the dresses, they were a little bit of a higher AOV, but we knew that we could cross-sell because they were of a similar price point. They weren't premium, but they weren't, fast fashion or anything like that. So they were a similar price point and it made sense. We weren't targeting somebody who purchased $100 item with $1,000 item, if that makes sense. So that's basically everything on the custom labels. I think we have an example here that Caitlin's going to go into in a second. Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I called at the beginning of this year is that DPA ads. So DPA ads are dynamic product ads, which here's an example of one with apartment 2B, but I'm calling that DPA ads are going to have a moment this year with advertising. And there's a few different reasons why. I think the first reason DPA ads are going to do really well this year is because it's a less of a lift with creative. I think one of the biggest challenges we see with clients on Meta is that, hey, we don't have the means to do all this creative. how can we get away from that? And it's dynamic product ads, and utilizing your product feed in these different strategic manners. And I think what's really great about DPA ads is that you now have that customizable aspect to it where you can add in value props to really get your message across. So in this example here with apartment 2B, one of the big things here that we recognize is that people want their products to get delivered as soon as possible. They're way long past that opportunity where you're going to sit and wait for a few weeks to get furniture. They want that immediate gratification. And so what we did was we created a product set of all the products that are ready to ship right then and there, and we put that value prop in it to just reinforce that, to really hit on what is a solution to a problem that these people are having. I guess not necessarily a problem, but something that they expect. And so it has been a really strong performance for us with just adding in that value prop. And so I think with meta ads and utilizing your product feed, one thing that you can really experiment with is adding catalog info. So within Meta Ads Manager, you have the opportunity to add in a strike-through price on your products to showcase like this is discounted. You can do free shipping label. You can do percentage off. You can do just the price of a product. So you can do all of that within Meta, which is great. So it gives you that capability to be more personalized with the product set. And two, of being able to add in value that you haven't been able to do in the past with product feeds. So my recommendation here is definitely test out catalog info labels, and then also test out adding a frame. So you can now add a frame where what you'll do is take a logo, or take specific text and just upload it to Meta, and it will go onto every single product image. So an easy way to add in more elements to those product images. And like I said, that's an area that I think with DPA ads this year it's going to blow up. You're going to see it more and more. This morning I actually saw an ad from Nike that was using a DPA ad, and every shoe, it had a different value prop on it based on the shoe. And so I think there's just so much creativity that can happen with the DPA ads that are just going to continue to come up. So something that I would say definitely invest in, figure out those value props, figure out your product sets that you want to be strategic with, and test, especially if especially if you don't have a ton of opportunity to utilize product sets.
Awesome. I love it. Another example, I think, where you've done this, Caitlin, that I think is really effective is creating a product set. So using the custom labels in the feed of products that are over a website's free shipping thresholds, just naturally in their price, and then create a free shipping frame. So I think that's an immediate takeaway some of our attendees can use. If you have a free shipping threshold of, say, $75, creating a product set in your catalog of all products over $75, putting a beautiful frame on those that says free shipping, and launching that as its own ad, I think is a really nice way to combine a couple of these different strategies: the product catalog, the segmentation, and the frames.
Yeah, love that for sure. So let's go into an example. So I mentioned this one at the beginning of the webinar, but Clean Coastal. So one thing that we noticed with our product set that we were running was that we were pushing all products with the DABA campaign. And one thing that we saw was that the CPA was a little bit higher than what we would like to see. We weren't seeing really efficient revenue, and that probably was because we had so many SKUs. So one thing that we did was we tried to pinpoint exactly, okay, what CPA are we looking to accomplish with this DABA campaign? So first, identifying that. Secondly, what we did was we identified who are we targeting? Who are these users? And it was where we decided completely cold users. Third thing we identified is, okay, let's look at profit margin, because obviously we want to be able to drive efficient revenue, not have to spend as much for these users. So we took into account profit margin. The last thing we looked at is price point. So with these users being cold users, typically they're not spending a ton per purchase on that first time purchase. So we then identified those kind of gateway products. And so what we found is we created this product set, we called it catnip, as like a way to get people in the door and get them to the site, get them to the product pages and see them convert. And so we had a segment of 50 products of these catnip products that we had identified based on profit margin, seasonality, the consumer that we're targeting. And what we found is it increased revenue by $30,000. ROAS was 551%, which was overly efficient. And our cost per acquisition for cold audiences for that cold audience was $34, which was much lower than the account average. And to all these metrics that we pulled here was on a 7-day click attribution, which means it's a very it doesn't have the view through attribution. So you're looking at an even more specific time frame of performance. So altogether, this win that we found is that really diving into your product offering and figuring out who are you wanting to target, what is your goal of this campaign, and then being strategic as to which products to showcase will lead to more efficient revenue and lower cost per acquisition. So I think the takeaway here is goes back to that key issue that a lot of e-commerce brands have is product and category positioning. It's taking a step back and figuring out what are the products that we really want to push, why do we want to push them, and do they align with our goals. So definitely something that you guys definitely should take a look at when looking for your next opportunity with custom label.
And we're launching our last poll here too. So if something we covered today sparked your interest or could benefit your business, just take a moment to fill out the poll and request an in-depth one-on-one audit. Caitlin and Rachel are two of our folks here who do those audits. So you're getting these insights into your Meta account directly. So we'll be able to call out where you might have opportunities to segment your products further, where you might be missing a call to action on some of your ad campaigns, where there's a mismatch in your landing page. So this personalized audit will focus on your primary KPIs, whatever your goals are with Meta, or expand to areas where you might need extra support, such as SEO, email performance, or paid ads. If you're not sure yet, no problem. Just click yes, and we'll share more details so you can decide if the time is right for you. So Caitlin, I want you to give the group a little bit of a summary of some things you found in audits and what that audit process looks like.
Yeah. So I love auditing accounts. I think it's really great to be able to go in and see kind of what other brands are doing, and then also just talking with other brands and understanding their goals. Because I think at the end of the day, to be able to give you guys the best audit possible is that you need to understand what your goals are. And so what we do with the audit process with Meta is that it's pretty much kind of like a report card. So what we do is compare your account to our best practice standards, which includes looking at your account structure. Are you hitting on every part of the buying cycle? Are you hitting awareness? Are you hitting consideration? Are you hitting conversion and loyalty? Do you have a full funnel structure within your account? We'll look at your investment strategy. Are you investing too much into past purchasers and being, overspending on that segment, or are you not being aggressive enough with cold audience acquisition? We'll take a look at your audience targeting, figure out, okay, are you having an overlap in audience targeting? Is that causing you to have to spend more and seeing less efficient results? And then last component to our audits is your creative. So taking a look at your creative, seeing does your creative result in driving an action? Is it compelling? Are you seeing really strong click-through rates? Are you driving users to the right landing pages? Are you speaking directly to your key segments? So really diving into your creative and understanding where you're doing things right, and then where are some opportunities of growth. So that would be really looking at your overall Meta account and us giving those recommendations and thoughts based on your overall goals. But when I think about the craziest thing in terms of an audit that I've seen is probably recently I was looking at a client account, and the client was like, hey, why am I not seeing revenue coming into my account? They were like, we have the pixel installed, everything's tracking correctly. And my first question to them was, how are you optimizing your campaigns? And they were like, well, our goal is to drive brand awareness and drive sessions to the site and drive revenue. And I was like, okay, those are two totally different goals. What's your end goal for your overall business? Drive efficient revenue. And so I looked into their account, and their campaigns were all optimized for brand awareness or traffic. Definitely goes back to, they wanted to drive more sessions, which they were with brand awareness and the traffic optimization, but where they were missing the mark is that they weren't attracting users that were looking to convert. So they weren't optimizing for conversions. A simple tweak to your campaign structure by optimizing conversions rather than optimizing for brand awareness, you will instantly see revenue start to trickle in. So that was probably one of the most recent ones I've seen where it was like an aha moment of, oh yeah, that makes sense to optimize for conversions and still attract new users rather than just focusing on brand awareness and traffic optimization. So yeah, if you guys are interested in letting us take a look at your Meta Ads account, we would definitely love to be able to give you some insights, some tips and tricks, and really help you grow more efficient revenue.
Totally. I love it. And like I said, if you are at all interested or you need information, hit yes, and someone from our team will reach out to you and just get you more information on what that audit might entail. That client that Caitlin just talked about who's looking for more revenue, we're kicking them off on Tuesday. So there's some good opportunities to potentially work together, or just get some insights and you can run away and implement them yourselves. Awesome. I'm going to end that poll. All right, great. Looks like we have quite a few people to reach out to, which is really exciting. So we have some more content, so don't go anywhere yet. We have one more section to finish up today.
Okay, next section here. I like this section a lot because a lot of times when clients come to me, they're obviously, their goal is revenue, and you think of Meta and you think of driving users to your site for them to make a purchase. But the other thought process to this is, okay, what are some other unique strategies that we can use to drive revenue? It might not be direct revenue that you see correlated in the Meta Ads platform, but it does drive revenue down the road. And that's through leveraging email lead generation. So if you click on the next slide.
Oh, Caitlin, you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Yeah, so maximizing lead value. So as a lot of e-commerce brands, you typically have like a first time customer email offer, where when users come to your website, a pop-up pops up on your website of sign up for an email, get X amount off. So that's an easy way for us to be able to utilize email lead generation on the Meta side to drive first party data, and then also drive that revenue. And like I said, you may not see that direct revenue right then and there with an email lead generation campaign, but it is valuable data that you can utilize down the road. So with it, one thing that I see a lot of times with e-commerce clients is when they utilize Klaviyo for their email provider. So Klaviyo and Meta have a one-to-one integration, which makes this a very, very seamless opportunity. So what happens is you can create an email lead form within Meta, push it to new users with that offer of, hey, sign up, you'll get 10% off your first purchase. They will click on the ad within the platform, fill out their information. Once they submit that information, it will go directly into an email flow on the Klaviyo side of things, and it will give them that full the full welcome flow to get that percentage off. So you are gathering that first party data that then you can utilize in remarketing efforts on the email side of things, but also on Google, also on Meta as well as to remarket to. So I think if you are utilizing Klaviyo and you are running Meta ads, this is a great opportunity for you to not have to spend too much and acquire first party data to utilize in all kinds of different capacities. The other thing to think about too is even if you aren't using Klaviyo, you can still use this email lead generation campaign in platform. I always recommend clients to do in platform lead generation campaign rather than driving to your site, just because it drives higher quality leads. With the in-platform lead generation campaign, what happens, like I said, is they will stay within platform, fill out all the necessary information that you need, all within a click of a button. So you get all of that data pretty quickly, and the conversion rate for email lead generation is much higher. I think when we look at it, it's about a 20% lower cost per qualified lead when you use an in-platform lead generation tactic rather than driving them to a landing page. So my big takeaway with this for e-commerce brands is if you do have a new customer offer, or even if you don't, think about utilizing that as a tactic to acquire new customer email leads and really drive that for you to help with your efforts for email. Okay, so looking at the key takeaways, so 3 big takeaways for today. So first one being looking at your landing pages. So take an opportunity to go through all your ads that you have running on Meta. Look at the landing pages, see if that matches up with your landing page conversion rate, and really optimize and create that frictionless customer experience with your landing page optimizations. Second thing is unlocking the hidden power of your custom label. So take a look at your products and figure out how can I utilize custom labels to create a more strategic plan to drive more efficient revenue, whether that be looking at your margins, looking at seasonality specific products, looking at bestsellers. So really being more strategic in how you're positioning products. And then lastly, remember, first party data is your secret weapon. So utilize that. Create an email lead generation campaign, gather that first party data, and really be able to use that to be able to remarket to those users and drive new customer acquisition at a lower cost.
All right, awesome. So we have a little bit of time for Q&A here. I saw some questions in the chat and some questions in the Q&A. Most of those seem to be about segmentation. So I'm going to combine 2 questions for Rachel and Caitlin. So one of the questions in our Q&A was sometimes Meta asks you to combine ad sets broken into remarketing and prospecting and cold audiences. And I'm going to combine that with Lance's question in the chat, which is how do you stop Meta from remarketing if you're really looking for cold? So I know, Rachel, you touched on this a little bit, but maybe let's just expand because we got a couple questions about this on really how to create a specific funnel in your Meta ads and add those in exclusions and bid modifiers at the ASC plus level.
Yeah, so when Meta says it recommends something, it's always best to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because I think sometimes what Meta recommends is in Meta's best interest, not your business's best interest. So when we're talking about segmentation, the best way to do this, I think, is by dividing things out into campaigns. So putting for example, what we do is we tend to have a separate cold prospecting campaign, and then we have a remarketing campaign. We put all of our cold prospecting audiences as ad sets into the cold prospecting campaign. So that gives you a little bit more of a visual look as to what the funnel itself looks like and how it's functioning. Because if we pile everything together, it gets very disjointed very quickly. So making sure that you have these like overarching campaigns broken out into remarketing and cold. And then at the ad set level, that's where you get more specific with your audiences. So you might have one audience in cold prospecting that's a lookalike, another that's focused on interests, and another that's maybe focused on demographics or something like that. But that's my biggest recommendation, is making sure that there's segmented out by campaign. That's just going to be the easiest for you to visualize and to work within.
Love that. Awesome. And Lance had another question that actually I can answer that one. So if we are starting small, is Klaviyo worth the expense rather than the native Shopify email? So small is relative, Lance. So it's going to be an it depends answer, but I think it does really depend on how big your list is. So when you have a large enough list that email is going to become a pretty solid revenue source for you, or solid community building source. We're a Klaviyo partner. I love working within Klaviyo. They have a wealth of data that you can use to segment, and it helps your sender reputation be really high because you can segment tightly and get great engagement. So I would say 500 is a little bit small. You might want to compare Klaviyo expenses to another platform, but if you make the jump onto Klaviyo when you still have about 500 or so subscribers, then you won't have to migrate your ESP later down the line, and you won't have to do any of that IP warming. So it's an investment that you could make now to really pay off later and start to build some momentum. So it's a great question. I'm happy to make an introduction. If you reach out to our team after this webinar, someone will reach out to you and you'll get the slides and everything. Then you can respond and ask to be introduced to Klaviyo. They'll give you kind of a rundown of what you might be expecting in terms of costs. So, all right, awesome. Looks like that is all of our time for today, everybody. So thank you so much for coming. This has been great, and someone will reach out to you if you filled in the Q&A. And if you missed that Q&A and you've changed your mind, feel free to reach out to us at the Agital website. So thanks for your time, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.